This is part 2 of My Daughter Embarrassed the Family. Now we're punishing her in the worst way possible. If you did not see part 1, you can check it out in the description below. Let's hop right into it, guys. The situation was worse than I thought, because now she was pregnant. She said that she's been taking birth control, but her mother-in-law found out and threw them out. Afterward, she warned my daughter that if she ever caught her again, she would hurt her. This was not the only incident where her mother-in-law mistreated her, for it had been happening since the first day she arrived. She used to make my daughter wake up before everyone else, help the twins get ready, run errands for her, take care of her husband, and be ready to do anything for her mother-in-law. She never got any rest in that house, with the mother and son demanding from her. It was especially difficult for her because she was not used to so much labor. When she could not cook the traditional food that they expected from her, they would throw it away and demand that she cook again. Her husband would come home at any time he wanted and would not have any explanations for her. Then he would forcefully lay with her. She had no choice in the matter and decided to just let it happen because every time she tried to fight, she would be beaten. They told her that if she told me, they would tell the family that she was being disrespectful and had not let go of her wild ways. The family had already been clear that if she failed the marriage, they would send her back to our country. I know what would happen to her there, but I don't even want to talk about it. Then there was the constant abuse from her mother-in-law to produce a son. Like most families, they were obsessed with having male sons to carry on the name. She was denied certain privileges in the house, like visiting friends or being able to buy her own clothes, because she had not given birth to a son. By the way, she was not the only daughter-in-law in the family. She had a younger sister-in-law who helped her mother-in-law to taunt her. If they wanted to be mean on a certain day, they would bring up the video and accuse her of having no honor. In the beginning, she tried to fight back against the abuse and refused to be made a slave. She did everything to get her husband to stay away from her and not give him the air that he wanted, but it got too much for her. She got tired of acting like she was happy in front of relatives, wearing heavy clothes, and watching how she spoke to people that she ended up depressed. Then she started to feel sick. But her mother-in-law did not care and forced her to continue working either way. This was when she ended up passing out and landing in the hospital a few days later. She said that her father came to see her, but she did not talk to him much. He refused to even look at her or answer her questions when she asked him if I knew that she was here. This was obviously news to me because my husband never told me she was in the hospital. I would not blame him since we hardly ever talk anymore. I did not recognize the person that he's become, who does not care about anything except his family. Anyways, the doctors did the test and congratulated her on her pregnancy. It was the worst thing possible because she did not want to have a baby with the man who forcefully married her. But this family, on the other hand, were overjoyed and instantly started treating her better. This did not lead to her changing her mind about them. She knew they were only taking care of her now because she was carrying someone precious. A baby who was a product of rape. Because, well, honestly, he raped her. It did not mean anything that he was married to her because she never wanted it. He forcefully took it and took advantage of her, and this is how the baby came to be. She told me that she was not ready to have a baby, not when she was in such a loveless and abusive home. Then, to add to the situation, it was a high-risk pregnancy. She had a good chance of survival, but just as good chance of not surviving the birth of a child. The doctor had advised the termination, then they could try later, but her husband said that's not allowed. His decision was the final one, and so she had to carry it to term, even though it might have taken her life. It was a lot to deal with, and it's been going on in front of my eyes. I did not know who to blame anymore. Me, her, or her father. The family. All I knew was that there was no way I was going to allow my child to suffer in that hellhole any longer. These people were heartless, and they would let her die if it meant getting what they wanted. I did not have time to feel sorry for myself or her in that terrible situation because I knew I had to do something. I knew if I did not do something now, she was only going to suffer for longer. As a mother, when she felt pain, so did I, and my protective instincts kicked in. First of all, I had to deal with the mother-in-law. I told my daughter to play along while I shouted at her for being irresponsible and not being careful during her pregnancy, and said she would not do that if she was at my house. Then the mother-in-law came to check what the heck was happening. My daughter then started acting very sick. I told her mother-in-law that she was very sick and we would need a lot more care. I would have to move in with them and take care of my daughter. Of course, she was panicked at the thought of me moving in because then I would see all they were up to. So, she suggested that I take my daughter with me for a few days, then bring her back. I knew from what my daughter told me that she hated having to take care of anyone but herself, so I used that against her. It was the perfect trick that led me to be able to take my daughter home with me. I just needed her to take a break for a while, and I would think of a way to help her escape. My husband was not happy about it once I reminded him that he never told me about her condition. He quickly shut up. For days, daughter stayed at my house trying to act sick, while I tried to find ways to get her out of the marriage. I would have to get him to agree to a divorce and get custody of the child, but that was difficult, because he was so much richer than us, and would probably drag the case on for years. It did not help that he called my daughter every 5 minutes to check on her. He wanted to know when she was coming home and wanted video calls to prove that she was indeed at her mother's house. By the end of the week, I had a plan, but I was just starting to process my funds, so I would give her some cash to run away. That was when the madman went straight to the family to complain that I was not letting him see his wife, and he feared I would do something to hurt her. I think he might have been on to me, or he was just paranoid that by now she must have told me what they did to her in the house. He lied about my forcing my daughter not to talk to him, and about my daughter being rude to him because she was being influenced by me. Then his mom said that I forced her to give me my daughter to take care of her. I could see that they wanted to fight dirty because they knew I could see through their nonsense. The next thing I knew, my daughter's husband showed up at my house with his mother, demanding that she should go with them. They called me a trickster who was trying to turn her away from her family. I knew better than to try to defend myself because they all have decided that I was the bad person. Even if I told them that he was abusing her, which was the reason why I made her stay with me. Not even my husband would believe me. They thought my daughter was a wild child who needed to be controlled, and it was all my fault. I told my daughter to go with them and just hang on for a little while, just until the bank cleared the funds, then she could run. She went back home, but afterward, my husband pulled me aside to talk to me. He told me that he was done with the way I was embarrassing him to the family, along with my daughter. It was clear I was leaving our culture behind in favor of the American way. He said that the elders were not impressed with him, and he was at risk of being disowned by his own family. That is the worst punishment ever, because we are people who rely a lot on family support. Without our family, it's like we do not even exist. So he said that to protect his relationship with the family, there were going to be some new rules in the household. The most important rule was that I was going to hand in my resignation and stay at home like a proper Muslim wife. He was also going to have my mother instruct me once again on what a proper Muslim wife was supposed to act like. He knew what that job meant for me. He did not care. I tried to beg him and tell him how much the job meant to me, but he said it was putting nonsense into my head. He did not want my earnings or my money because, well, he thought I would leave him. I knew those were lies his brother has been telling him for a while, and he was starting to believe them. I realized then and there that I never actually knew him, that he was a very progressive man because it suited our lifestyle here in the States. But deep down, he still had the same values he was taught by his family. And now, he was letting them make a decision about our lives, about our marriage. I begged him to change the decision, and I promised to be a better wife. That job was one of the things that made me happy now that our kids were all grown up and had their own lives. I enjoyed interacting with people from different cultures and learning new things every day that I would not have known if I was back in my home country. It was also my financial independence. I enjoyed not having to bother him for money for every single thing I needed, as my sister-in-law did to my brother-in-law. I tried to explain to him why it was such a bad idea and how my work had never negatively affected me. But he did not budge, told me to quit by the end of the week, serve my notice, and stay home. I had no other choice but to do it. It was not as easy for me to leave as it would have been for another woman from a different culture. This is something most people just don't understand. But I was never going to let my daughter suffer. I've lived my life and been mostly happy now. It was her turn to enjoy her youth. All I hoped when I helped her get free was that she would not waste this opportunity, and she had changed. We cannot forget the situation that landed her here in the first place. I handed in my resignation and was given a 2-week notice, plus some money from my service to the company. That, along with the money that the bank had just cleared from my account, was enough for my daughter to have a fresh start somewhere. I put the rest in my retirement fund because I knew I would need it. I gave her the money to run. I told her run away. But she had one last act of rebellion in her. She said that she was going to keep the baby and raise it alone. But when she went to the doctor, she was told that the baby was not forming properly. Several things would happen if she did choose to go through with it. She would pass on, or the baby would not survive, or she would have disabilities and be on life support for the rest of her days. Now I know some people are against abortion out there, but it had to do with her life and his. Even if she chose to carry him to term, he was probably going to die, or live a miserable life, and she did not want her child to suffer. When she called me crying after the procedure, she expected me to shout at her and disown her. I will not say that I would have done it if I was in her position, but I will say that I told her that now she had to make better choices going forward. She took the money and ran. I did not hear until a few months later. We had made that decision because I knew that the family would be watching me and suspecting me of helping her out. They did suspect me, but they did not have any proof. My husband protected me when they were trying to force me to confess, but that does not mean I forgave him for not defending our daughter. There are some things that he said over the past few months that made me believe he knows I helped her. But he's not confronted me about it. Things are just not the same between us. You must be wondering, what happened to her in-laws? Well, she left them a very insulting letter, telling them that there was no baby and she was no longer their daughter-in-law. They came with a letter demanding that she should find her and drag her back to their house. Her husband was so angry that he looked like he could murder someone, looking directly at me. He pointed at me in front of everyone and called me a witch that killed his baby, but my husband told him never to call me such names. In her absence, he divorced her and cut off any ties he had with us. The family in turn accepted the divorce and also cut off all ties with my daughter. So now she's out there in the world with no family whatsoever. But she's okay. I managed to go see her a few months after everything died down, and she apologized to me for all the stuff she put me through. She accepts that it was her fault that the video leaked, and she should not have been abusing substances. She also apologized for the way she treated me after I did not save her from her punishment. She's grateful that in the end, I risked a lot to help her get free when everyone else turned their backs on her. At the moment, she's studying part-time while working, and I'm so proud of her. We talk as much as we can, and she gives me updates on her studies and her life. She's less loud now and determined to make something of herself, and I've never been so proud. As for her dad, he made what sounded like an apology to me a while back. He said that he wished he had not gotten her married to the man, but he was so angry. Then he asked me if she was okay since I was her mother and I could feel her. I told him that yes, she was okay, and I believe she forgave him, but I don't know when I'll be able to forgive him myself. Let's just say this entire time, waiting on this update to come out and whatnot, I think it ended the best possible way it could have. Or at least it did not in the worst way. Now OP finally got her daughter out, safe and sound, and she's on her own. Yes, she did have to suffer some consequences for her actions, but guys, let me know your thoughts of this update. Drop them down below, let's discuss it, and I would love to hear your opinion. But now, we're going to look at our second story of the day, and it's the final one of the video. Am I the a-hole for suing my girlfriend after she's had my 1967 Impala project taken to the scrapyard? I'll try to keep this short. I had a 1967 Impala 4-door that I bought in February 2019. A couple months ago, I bought my first house that had a 2.5 car garage. I moved the car in and started tearing it down for a complete restoration. I had the body in one bay and the chassis in another, plus the whole garage filled with parts. About 2 months ago, my girlfriend came to live with me during this whole crisis, and had the whole time has hated my car. She wants to park in the garage, but I have 2 acres of land with a lot of nice places to park under shady trees, or hell, even in the barn if it has to be inside. I tell her tough luck. It's my house, and it's not like I can just throw it back together really quick. Anyways, I was out of town for a couple days on a business trip for a small local company I work for. When I got back, my girlfriend was all smiles ear to ear, making me food all the time, doing all the chores, the whole shebang. I thought maybe she was just happy to have me home, but then I realized I don't see her car in the usual spot. I asked her where she parked so I could make sure I mowed that area to keep it clean, and she said not to worry, she parked in the garage. I asked her how, and she told me to go check it out for myself. Turns out, while I was gone, she hired some people to come over and move everything related to the car, including the drivetrain, body, chassis, and all parts, and take it to the local dump scrapyard. I was obviously dumbfounded. I've spent $11,000 on that car, including new parts, services, and the car itself. I told her that, well, I was going to be taking her to court, and she brushed me off like I was just being dramatic. I told her that it's done between us. Pack her crap and get out now. I admit, I was really angry, but I did end up getting a lawyer, and I have all the receipts for all the money spent, and I have her on my house's security cam footage, letting the guys in, watching them take it all, and I think I can win. Her family and friends are absolutely blowing me up, saying it's just a stupid old piece of junk, that she could not pay back all the money I spent, and that I should just let it go. But I've been putting all my time, effort, and money into that car for 1.5 years now, and gosh darn it, if I'm not going to get justice for what she did, oh man. So, am I the a-hole? Okay guys, listen. Huge update. They found my freaking car. The junkyard guys apparently were in the middle of hiding it when the police came to question them. It was on a forklift and they were gonna put it on top of a pile of cars that was hidden between more piles of cars. They said it was theirs and they had the title, but obviously they did not have the title for it. And since they matched the VIN on the chassis and the body to the VIN on my title, it was obviously mine. I know at least one person there has been arrested. I think what he did was he was in the camera footage that I talked about earlier, but I don't know if it was the boss or whomever, or even his specific charge. They also told me they would be looking into the specific junkyard for any other vehicles reported stolen. They said they have not been able to get in contact with my ex just yet, but they're working on it. I'm just so glad they found my car. Luckily, I made quite an album of pictures detailing me tearing down the car, so I can use that to prove what parts that were mine, so I can hopefully get most or all of it back. Police have not let me take it back home yet, as they say it's evidence or something, so hopefully I can get it back eventually. Thank you so much for the support and advice. She's gonna be alright. Okay, so here's the top comment. Not the a-hole, sue her booty. Sue her for the cost plus the few extra $1,000 for the time and money. Have her prosecuted for theft, destruction of private property, and have the guys that came to get it prosecuted for receiving stolen goods. Nail them all to the wall. Alright guys, so let me know. Do you agree with that comment or do you totally disagree? Drop your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope each and every one of you have a wonderful evening, and I will see you in the next one.